So on November 30, Barbados will no longer have the English Queen as head of state. It will become a parliamentary republic with a ceremonial elected president as head of state, and the prime minister will remain as head of government. But what does becoming a republic mean? We ask David Commission, Barbados' ambassador to CARICOM. Good morning, Ambassador.
Morning,
Commission.
sir.
Good morning. So it's a real pleasure to be here.
Welcome once again, sir.
Thank you.
It sounds like the change was long in coming. Is that right?
Very much so. As far as I'm concerned, it's 55 years overdue. Should have happened on the 30th of November, 1966, when we became independent.
Why now?
Oh, well, I guess the question really would be, why didn't it happen back then? You know, why did we go into independence with that kind of constitutionally compromised independence, that kind of constitutionally compromised sovereignty? So, you know, obviously the leaders of that time made those calculations, but after we went into independence in 1966, within 10 years, the government set up a constitutional review commission to look at this issue of whether we should do away with the Queen of England as our head of state. That was in 1976, 78. The decision back then was no. Barbados was not ready for that yet. 20 years later, in 1996, another government set up another commission to look at it. They consulted the country, and the decision back then was yes. After 30 years of independence, a national identity had solidified, and the Barbadian people wanted to make that move. Unfortunately, governments kind of hemmed and hawed with implementing that recommendation of the Constitutional Review Commission. And it is only with Prime Minister Motley coming to power in 2018 and making that firm declaration, and she has followed through. So she has done what other prime ministers said they were going to do, but for one reason or another failed to do. So the point is, if the Constitutional Review Commission determined back in 1998 that we were ready then of course, 25 years later, we are even more ready. And so the time has come, and it is happening.
Yes. How important is a transition like this, Ambassador? You mentioned national identity, but how important is a transition like this to a people, to a nation embracing full independence and embracing themselves as Bajans?
Yes, it's extremely important. I mean, look, the concept of sovereignty is that sovereignty is the power of a state to do everything necessary to govern itself, for itself, by itself. And when our countries became independent in the 1960s, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados in 66, we compromised sovereignty. When we made those two compromises, we compromised with our judicial system. We said that we were going to allow the British Privy Council to remain our highest national court.
Yeah.
That was a compromise on the power to do everything necessary to govern oneself. And then the second compromise had to do with retaining the Queen, the monarch of Britain, as our head of state. I mean, what is a head of state? A head of state is the public representative who is deemed to embody the unity and legitimacy of the nation. So we made a second serious compromise, because how can, as much as we may admire Queen Elizabeth II, how can this English woman living thousands of miles away from the Caribbean embody the unity and legitimacy of our nations? How can she represent the tortuous historical struggle of our people against enslavement and colonization and fighting for their, for self-determination and self-realization? So those were two very fundamental compromises. Fortunately for us in Barbados, we played a big role in establishing the Caribbean Court of Justice. And in 2005, we broke away from the British Privy Council, and the CCJ became our own highest national court. So this is the second compromise that we are now dealing with. And, you know, for our own self-respect, this needs to happen.
Yes.
We are making, you know, our Prime Minister Errol Barrow said that we must not find ourselves loitering on colonial premises after closing time. So for our own self-respect, it is important that we do this. And as Barbados more and more takes on an international leadership role in the international community, representing developing countries, which are all former colonies, Barbados cannot be stepping out on the international stage, being a leader in international affairs. And then when you look behind us, you see the monarch of Britain still hovering over us.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah. An extension to Delia's question, sir. If a young Barbadian saw you and said, what is it going to be different for me? What would you tell that young man or young lady?
Well, I would stress the important symbolism of it all, the self-respect, the fact that at a psychological level, we are confirming that we are totally independent and sovereign and totally in control of our own affairs. But beyond that, the government has promised that come January of 2022, the country is going to engage in a year-long national consultative process of looking at all aspects of our constitution, of our governance arrangements, and determining for ourselves what changes we may wish to make. Okay. Now, we went through this exercise 25 years ago with that previous Constitutional Review Commission. I was 36 years old in 1996, and my generation embraced that opportunity to have that national conversation and to propose reforms to our system of governance. So I am hoping that my children now, who are now in their 30s, that they likewise will embrace this opportunity to put their own stamp on what the future Republic of Barbados will look like.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a conversation we're having across the region, Ambassador. Here in Jamaica, we're having it as well. What are your words for us? Peter Wickham says you could have that conversation because your current constitution, unlike that of other former British colonies, allows for change without a referendum. Would you recommend that we start looking at some of those changes ourselves so that we can make these transitions?
Yes, of course. I mean, you know, Jamaica and Barbados are very similar. Jamaica and Barbados have had very, very similar histories. That 1655 British expedition that conquered Jamaica from the Spanish sailed off from Barbados with thousands of Barbadians on board those military vessels. The first British governors of English Jamaica were from Barbados, yes. People like Sir Thomas Modiford and so forth. So we have had a very similar history. Barbados was like Britain's mother colony. We were known as Little England.
Yes.
But truth be told, Jamaica was the mother colony in the northern part of the Caribbean. Barbados was the mother colony in the southern and eastern part of the Caribbean. So my message to Jamaica is that, look, if Little England could do it, surely Jamaica can do it as well. It's really a matter of simply, you know, coming into our own. The truth is that although we speak about the Queen as being the head of state, the reality is, on the ground in Jamaica and Barbados, she is represented by a local Jamaican and a local Barbadian.
Yep.
And the reality is that whatever the Constitution says, the Constitutional Convention is that the Queen does not choose that representative, that Governor General.
Yeah.
They are chosen by our prime ministers. So we have demonstrated over decades that, we can manage all of the functions associated with the head of state. So why not simply take it into our own hands and install our own native head of state, democratically elected by our people and their representatives?
Final question, sir. And unfortunately, I need a quick answer for this one. Barbados will remain a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. What does that mean, sir?
Well, the Commonwealth, the club of former British colonies, there are 53 such nations. Most of them have broken away from the Queen as their head of state. In fact, 38 of the 53 have already made that break. Barbados will be the 39th member of the Commonwealth to make that break. So you can break away from the Queen as your head of state and still remain a member of that organization.
Okay.
All of the former African colonies have made that break. All of the Asian colonies from Singapore to India to Pakistan, Sri Lanka, they've all made that break. Truth be told, it is only the Caribbean colonies plus the three white Commonwealth countries, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and you can see them as kith and kin to the British, and three Pacific nations, Tuvalu, Solomon Islands, two microstates, and Papua New Guinea. So those are the only ones that are still holding on to the Queen.
Okay.
So this is the movement, and I am hoping that Barbados's example will be an example to the other 8 Caribbean community nations that still have the British monarchy as their head of state, and our example will encourage them to make that break as well.
We congratulate you, sir. We congratulate you. We wish you good luck. We thank you for speaking with us, and God bless you and your country, sir. Take care.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
David Commission, Barbados' ambassador to CARICOM.
After the break, eliminating violence against